Thank you so much for taking the time today and being a part of our Community of Practice channel here on YouTube. And on behalf of Setsi, I want to thank you so much for your leadership today.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you.
Awesome. So as always, we begin by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So if you can please do us the honors by introducing yourself to our listeners and viewers and tell us about your amazing work.
Yeah, great. So my name is Kate Arthur. I am based in Montreal, Canada, and I focus primarily on literacy now and AI literacy. So my background, I studied English literature. Actually, I come from many years of traveling as a child globally. And we settled in Canada in my teens, and then went in to study English literature. And I thought that that's what I was going to do, is work on the word. Just the power of communication through the written word it has huge impact, and I wanted to just become a master of the written word. And so I went into communications and trying to build bridges and use the written word to communicate with wide audiences, and moved back to the UK, and I met a computer scientist. And that's kind of where my pivot happened. I was exposed, this is in like the late 1990s, I was exposed to my first lines of code. He was a programmer, and he built software for companies. And I realized what was happening as the internet was coming into play, World Wide Web was coming, we were building websites, and businesses were moving into the digital space, was that we were starting to mirror the physical world into a digital world. And we were also bringing along all of the biases and all of the divides along the way. And we ended up, Darren and I, my husband, ended up starting an IT company, a tech company, helping not-for-profits primarily move their physical data from their companies into this digital space. And I was really struggling because I didn't master the languages of the digital world. And I thought, if I'm going to feel this, and I reflected back on my studies of English literature, where it was primarily the white man, very elite, wealthy, who knew how to read and write and held the power. We were doing the same with the world of the digital world. It was being built by a very, very minor population. So the white man, if you look now, top list of top 5 men or top 5 people on the Forbes richest list, it would be 5 white men. 4 of them knew how to code. So I felt that we were just doubling all of the things that we were doing in the physical world that went wrong. We could correct it, and because it was such early stage. And so I started a charity called Kids CCUNESCO, wanting to make sure that girls in particular, but all kids in public schools, because public schooling in Canada is free and it's mandatory, that they had access to these skills to diversify the people who were building the digital world. I ran that until 2023. I stepped down to write a book focusing on called Am I Literate? Because in 2017, we were starting to see patterns of now AI moving into the new space of literacy. So how AI or algorithms and data and math were now shaping another new world, and now communicating with us in both the digital and the physical spaces. And I really wanted to dig into that. And I wanted to make sure that we, within my small little way, have some sort of agency of trying to make sure we're not repeating patterns. And so that's why I wrote the book. And now I'm focusing really on how do we make sure we're not widening the digital divide and widening the literacy divide, whether it's, from reading and writing right to AI.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And that's so important to point that out as far as who's controlling, who's dominating, like you said on the Forbes list. So We have these things that are made aware, and I was actually just talking about that in the last interview, just as far as just coming to a world of fairness and justice in that grand scheme of things of coding, because there's many nationalities that do the coding, but are they being recognized?
Yeah.
So yeah, that is amazing. All right,
Yeah.
so what inspires you about the work that you do?
What right now I know that that change can be made. It's not doomsday in my lens. I know that we can make change, and through the work I did with Kids Code, starting it, I didn't have anything. I wasn't a computer scientist. I didn't have loads of money to build something. It came from the community when we started Kids Code Jeunesse. It was really a collective effort to make sure that we were trying to make change, and we did. We figured out the levers that needed to be pulled and adjusted to get funding from governments and industry, and how to, start to work on changing policies and structures. So now I know we can change, and I know we can make impact. My drive now is that we can only make impact when we understand the technology. So it, if we're illiterate, if we don't have an understanding how these machines are using our data and turning that data into knowledge, and knowledge is power. If we're leaving that again to the minority, there will be a widening of wealth. We're repeating history, and we can address it when people have a basic understanding. And the same as reading and writing, when people learn the skills and have the knowledge and access to the tools, we can democratize that and provide agency. So one person at a time, if I can make sure that one person at a time is understanding how these machines work, they have a voice and they can say something.
That's so true. Absolutely. So, ask you, what challenges or barriers have you faced in your work, and how have you overcome them, or in the process of overcoming?
But I think that at the moment, barriers are large hype. There's so much hype around artificial intelligence right now, and it's moving so fast. Um, our world hasn't been, the physical space hasn't been built to move that quickly. So a real challenge is how do we help make these systems that are used to moving, at snail's pace, make them more agile and flexible while not doing more damage to people and planet. What happens in periods of massive innovation and disruption, like in each of the industrial revolutions, is people and planet take the hit. Whether it's, and we saw that in the first industrial revolution with the climate, and, climate change rapidly escalated at that period. People, the child labor, and, etc. Like there was a rise on impact, sweatshops, all of these things that we need to pay attention to. And that's a job of government, is to really make sure right now they're protecting people and planet, because innovation and industry will go super fast and won't think about that. So those are sort of like the challenges and the barriers, and again, working together with government, industry, and civil society. How do we start to make those changes? And you have to make them together. Otherwise, one goes super fast and leaves the rest behind.
That's so true. Absolutely. So let me ask you, like, do you have anything that you're currently working on, anything that you want to amplify at this time?
Yeah, so I wear many hats right now. I am starting a business with a small team, focusing on a product. I'm really interested now in exploring our human capabilities in the world of AI. And so how do we strengthen our human skills, focusing on the communication and collaboration and the critical thinking skills, how do we do that human to human? So we're exploring ways of that right now. So that's sort of like my entrepreneurial hat, is that that's my next business to build. I haven't done that before. I haven't done a product before, so that's exciting. And then how, I'm sitting on a few boards, not for governance purposes. That's not my expertise, but to really, how do I stay connected to the kids, to the youth, which is where my heart is, in education, and how do I help lift up that next generation and give them, how do I give them, like, my shoulder, like, how do I let, like, go. So I've been really fortunate to be on a bunch of, like, teams that I'm helping youth here in Canada and in the United States and the UK. I'm helping a bunch of young entrepreneurs getting themselves started, and that I find really, really rewarding. And then the third part is I'm writing another book. And we're collaborating on it with a few people. But I do find that the written word is a space where I can come together, collect my thoughts, collect my own learning, and solidify it so that I can share it with people.
That's awesome. We appreciate that. And that I always say that about the next generation. We're laying a foundation and we are putting in the work, but the next generation, even this new and the Gen Z, they're holding us accountable. They're like, what are you
Yeah,
leaving us behind? What do you leave? What's the baton you're giving us that we have
yeah,
to carry on, So we are doing our part, but there's so much more that needs to be done. But at least we can say, hey, we're laying that foundation and we're building from there. So yeah,
yeah,
I always say that too.
totally. And
Exactly.
I think, to give the next generation the permission to push, and I I worry with the anxious generation. The book that recently came out was so great, but that they get overwhelmed with anxiety, without, because they can't control. And a lot of that has to do with, because this digital world was built without thinking about the social impacts on not just kids, on all of us, right? So the children's attentions and etc. So how do we give them that voice? You stand up and you stand strong, and find you find your place, and own your place. I think it's really, really important, and I enjoy doing that.
Absolutely. That's amazing. So let me ask you, how do you feel about the future? Like we were talking about it, we're talking about the future, but how do you feel about the future of social impact in Canada? Real brief.
Yeah, I'm again hopeful, positive. I love to see, I mean, when I step down from my role, and you're free person. There's nothing holding you in any area, and in Canada, the social community, the impact community, just grabbed me up. So, being part of Montreal AI Ethics Institute, being, part of, the world, your world, and giving the space and the platform to share, areas that I have, quite a lot of experience in, is hopeful. I think the important thing now, moving forward with the new government we have in place, and opportunities that we have, is that we need to be crossing the borders and boundaries, and making sure that it's not, social impact is not in isolation. Industry needs to come together, government needs to come together, and it does take that collaborative effort to move forward.
100% agree. Well, this has been so powerful, Kate. We thank you so much for all that you do. I would say my last question to you is just if you have any closing thoughts or calls to actions at this time.
Yeah, I would. I mean, there's no excuse to not jump in to try and test out a little bit of AI, and to go online again. There's great free courses. Um, I would just also make sure everyone remembers that AI is a tool, and it's not magic, and it is impacting people and planet in both positive and in negative ways, and it's up to each of us to understand and take the responsibility to learn those impacts.
Exactly. Well, Kate, we want to thank you so much again for taking the time today to really expressing, your gift and your purpose. We hear it in your voice. We wish you much success. And I know we're going to be collaborating. Victor has already sent the invite. So
Okay,
again, we
great.
thank you on
Yeah,
behalf of
super.
SETI. That's it.
Thanks so
That's it.
much.
Oh, you're welcome. So we will close the way that we began by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, Kate, thank you once again, and we'll definitely be in touch, okay?
Super. Have a great weekend.
You too. All the best.
Bye.
Bye bye.